Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. We are in a place that I've had a lot of marinara here. I've had some big boy grown-up grape soda here. We're at the bar at Amicci's. We're in Little Italy. It's all brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery. Ravens scratch-offs to give away. We got a holiday party going on behind us. Everybody's going to be big winners here today. Also, our friends at Jiffy Lube Multi-Care putting us out on the road. Luke's getting us ready for the Steelers this week. Houston on Christmas night. We got lots of friends stopping by today. We're going to be at Costas on Wednesday. There's a rumor that Hall of Famer Gina Schock will be stopping by on Wednesday, too. But I got all Hall of Famers here. Sam Sessa's going to be coming by today from WTMD. John Maroon's going to be here. Alan McCallum and friends are going to be here. Chris Corman from the Baltimore Banner, where when this thing all implodes, I'm going to need a job. So I'm glad that he's coming by. And we're going to begin things with a guy that's never done this next to me. You know, and it's terrible when I sent out the APB to all my friends, Marty Conway amongst everybody. I said I'm going to be doing Coco's, going to be doing Fadley's, going to be doing Gertrude's, going to be doing Costas, all my traditional crab cake places. And all my buddies picked Amicci's, and they don't have a crab cake here. That's right. I don't even know if this is the real crab cake tour or not, but we're going to have a pane rotundo here. But I've already had calamari, so I've already gone to the sea. Mm-hmm. So there's been a seafood element here, and if I see food, I eat it. But happy holidays, man. What's going on?
Thank you, sir. I'm good. Thanks. Good to be here.
How is the good professor from Georgetown University and all of these other sports business things? It's a great time to be talking about sports business. That's why I bother you so much, bring you on, because it's a vibrant topic, and I think even when I have Chris Corman here or Alan talking baseball later today, or whether it's the Ravens and where sports are going, the money and the business, and I think as we all figure out, where's the game? Is it on Netflix, Apple TV, Amazon? That's all coming with football playoffs in the next couple weeks, where this confusion reigns, and you sit in the middle of it, honest. Marty ran the Orioles for many years back in the 80s in sales departments, as well as the Texas Rangers in Major League Baseball, also America Online, just as a full for anybody that doesn't know Marty's work. But you teach this, and I had Mark Hyman on since the last time we got together from Maryland talking about journalism students, which I would have been that guy. But I think as life has evolved, I probably, if I went back to college, I'd be in your class, right? Yeah. I'd be in the sports. That's where my head is. Right. And I remember when I was a kid saying to Jack Gibbons, who was my boss, like, who cares about the business of sports? I mean, I don't care about that, you know. If you don't care about that, you can't address Major League Baseball, let alone Oriole baseball, in an off season in this way, right? I mean, and I think the fans are figuring out now, well, Mr. Rubenstein's got big pockets, but there is the business behind it, the stadium, what the Ravens have done, that needs to cultivate the vibrancy as I look through all my old Baltimore Colts stuff that's gone.
The mixture of sports, business, and now media is a pool of, it's a common area that you're right. You can no longer just separate the reporting of sports, say, on the field, compared to the reporting of sports, business, media. We're going to have 2 games on Christmas Day from Netflix for the first time. All eyes are going to be on what's the quality, how many people tuned in, how many subscriptions, all those different things. That's going to be the story. The NBA used to own Christmas Day, right? 5 or 6 games, everybody focused on that. The NFL said, excuse me, we're just going to elbow you out there because Christmas is on a Wednesday this year. So teams are playing, all 4 teams that are playing on Wednesday have been organized to play on Saturday this weekend, right? So you have some of the best teams in the NFL, some of the teams that are likely playoff teams.
Uncanny how they pick those teams.
Playing 3 games within 10 or 11 days at the end of the season. Why? Because it's the drama. It's the end of the season. It's when the ratings are highest. People are watching the most, streaming subscriptions and all that. So it's all carefully planned because the dollars now are so tall, so high, the investment's so high from the media organizations. They've got to get the best teams. Right? They got to get the best teams. They got to get increasingly in the NFL, the number of games that are no longer Sunday at 1 o'clock, that are Thursday night,
they played
Sunday
2
night,
on Monday night this week.
Saturday, this coming
because of the media part, right?
Starting this weekend, we see Saturday games in the NFL for the final 3 weeks of the season because they want that game in a standalone broadcast window because it has a tendency to draw more eyeballs at that. So I think in the future you're going to see fewer and fewer games Sunday at 1 o'clock. That used to be the traditional Sunday at 1, Sunday at 4. Now you're going to see fewer games at 1, fewer games at 4, and more games in prime time spread out through the course of the week, including Christmas. Like I said, again, it's a Wednesday. They're going to be playing on a Wednesday.
I would think for the junior version of Marty Conway or little Nestor Aparicio, if I were a student 20 years ago, let's say at the dawn of the internet, late 90s, 25 years ago now, to think that Pete Rozelle or even Paul Tagliabue, who's still with us and alive, would have the ability to go beyond CBS, NBC, ABC, and Fox, and then ESPN came on, right?
Yep.
HBO was giving him 10 cents for Inside the NFL. Then, like all of these marketing little pieces that were part of the NFL. Now with Amazon, Netflix, Apple, these multi-billion-dollar international companies platforming this. If you're logging on to Netflix in Australia, you're getting a football game on Christmas Day, right? I see that with Amazon Prime with these Thursday nights. I'm not a big Amazon shopper, I'm just not. But I'm keyed in and I go in there. The buffering part, the quality of that sham fight that Tyson put on a couple weeks ago, and those issues, all of that bakes into the thing you talked about 10 years ago when you came here, which is Roger Goodell is going to grow this business into whatever the billion, 30 billion, whatever the number was, right? And how that's going to happen. It's going to happen because Paul Tagliabue and Pete Rozelle couldn't have seen Ravens.com, NFL.com, streaming anywhere, anytime. They certainly couldn't have thought about gambling revenue. It was something that was never –
It was illegal.
It couldn't have even been brought up as a revenue stream, and it's now – I don't want to call it an ocean, but it's a pretty good little pond. They're Great Lakes that they've built on all of these things. I don't know what is over the hill other than the international part of this, and maybe this speaks to me thinking of the Baltimore Ravens as a local organization because it's just it'll never be that again because it can't. The Orioles are a local organization, and you see where that problem is that they can't have Juan Soto. They can't have good toys. They might not be able to have Corbin Burns. Where when you pool that money in the NFL, they're going to put a game next year in Germany, a game in Brazil, a game in Mexico City. They've done all that this year. They're going to continue to do that. And the amount of money that comes in has to become international money. And I think the number one way you do international money is to do international business, right?
Well,
and that's where Apple and Amazon and Netflix take them above and beyond ABC or ESPN or things that anytime you travel outside of this country, you have no access. Nobody knows what the hell NBC and ABC or CBS are. In Toronto, you don't know what they are, right? Like literally. But these other things make them somebody in Singapore will be watching the game because they logged on to Apple, right? Like literally, right?
No, broadcast entities are licensed in this country and around the world. They're licensed nationally, right? BBC in England, NBC here, whatever it is. Amazon, Netflix, et cetera, Apple, those are not, right? Those are, like you said, international platforms where you play one game and you show it in 195 countries or whatever your limitation is to do it. So they've recognized that just like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or any of the other brands, you're only going to grow when you grow outside the territory that you primarily sold in, right?
Well, speak to that with the Washington Commanders. They made a hire recently. I mean, the Ravens have hired Sashi Brown. Hi, Sashi. I'm still here if you want to come and talk about your football team. But the Sashi of the Commanders is not in any way a football background person, right?
No, he came from Campbell's Soup Company, CEO of Campbell's Soup Company, right? So international, well-known brand. We've been on the shelves of grocery stores for decades, right? Now they look at that and say, we are not just a team that functions 8 or 10 home games, preseason, regular season, whatever it is.
They make soup every day at Campbell's.
Exactly, and they sell soup every day at Campbell's, and the Commanders and everybody else in the NFL is in the business of being in business every day. Is there something to sell? There's not a game, obviously, every day, but there's something else. Teams now want to have the draft that's in May in their local market. People
bigger
want
than a Super Bowl.
people wanted to move the combine out of Indianapolis, but the scouts and everybody pushed back. But to be able to take those things, so there's more and more. I think you're going to see less training camp, more regular season games, because what's going to demand is, like I said, the dollars that are coming in from media have to go somewhere, and they're going to demand games, number one, regular season games, and games in prime time. So it's really just a reflection that nimble and flexible, whether you're Apple, Steve Jobs, or whether you're Roger Goodell, you need to recognize where the opportunity is. And look, Roger Goodell has, the Packers are community owned, but otherwise there's 31 other board of directors that he works for, and they each have invested a certain amount of dollars. Increasingly, the Commanders at $6 billion, right? And they need a return on investment. Where's the liquidity going to come from?
Stakes are a lot higher when you buy $6 billion than where Steve Bisciotti is, where he put $600 million up 2 decades ago, right?
Yeah, and what you're paying for, what's the interest on that dollar? What's the finance and things that you're doing on that? So the ROI, the return on investment, whether it's a new stadium, you look at what just happened in Buffalo, right? They're getting a new stadium. It'll be open in roughly 2 years.
And people on Island paid for it.
And they
right?
have now some minority investors, and you look at the valuation difference from when the Pagula family bought the team to what the valuation is now. It's exceptionally higher, so they sold 25% of it to minority interest, right, minority partners. And if you look at the valuation, what changed? Buffalo is still the same market, but they have a new stadium. The games are now with massive TV contracts, and so overall.
Are they doing PSLs up there?
They are doing PSLs.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
For that fan base in the modern – what does a PSL look like at this point? I mean, like I called it a poor sucker's license in 1996 when Roy Summeroff and David came on. I mean, I coined that phrase, even though I bought 8 of them originally, and I wound up keeping 4 of them, and I literally turned them in and got nothing for them. Mm-hmm. I know some people that turned them into money. I've had a couple of friends of mine say, I sold those things at $513 for $8,000, man. And I'm like, God bless you, man, but that was not my experience with PSLs.
I would say the question
I know that the Jets and the Giants were going to do that too, right? And
the question is, what is it worth? I mean, how much would it have been worth in New England 10 years ago? How much is it worth would it be worth in Kansas City today?
Well, the Bills are winning at the right time.
That's
right?
what I'm telling you, right? So if you can put those combination things together, then that has the ability to be worth something more in the future. But increasingly in sports, particularly in the NFL and other high stakes, you cannot any longer afford 2 years in a row of a losing season. You literally can't. Because the depression into your fan base, suddenly your team is no longer on primetime games.
Look at the Raiders going into Las Vegas and being just tremendously awful, right?
And that's why if you listen or go to a Raiders game or listen or watch a game, more than half of the people in those seats are for the other team. Right?
Well, the amazing thing is like the Chargers and the Rams in L.A. I was there when the Rams won the Super Bowl at home and all that. They've been there 5 minutes. Everybody been a Rams fan for about 4 minutes.
Right.
And the Chargers are out there trying to do something. And I saw Joe Ortiz down when Bisciotti and those guys blew me off at the owners' meetings. And I said to Joe, I do have a Chargers a towel that I got when I was out there years ago. He said, we got plenty of room on our bandwagon. And I'm thinking, how? And I know that there's 12 million people in L.A. or whatever, right? But like, the Jaguars, just the Tampa Bay Rays, the Orioles aren't far from that. I mean, the Orioles, have a better thing going than, and certainly Katie Griggs, and we're going to get to that in a minute. Marty Conway's our guest. We're at Amicci's here. It's all brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery, Jiffy Lube Multicare. We're doing the crab cake tour, even though we're going to have meatballs today. But the baseball thing to say we're going to be bigger and better, I haven't heard anything from them in 2 months. I haven't met Katie Griggs. I don't see anybody on the streets. The players have been gone. There's a level of embarrassment about not scoring runs or whatever that shouldn't go away Christmas week when they're trying to sell this new thing that they have here against this Ravens thing. And for bad franchises and franchises that have played themselves into small market or awfulness or room to grow, I look at like the Cincinnati Bengals have gotten up and become like a thing there where tickets are $300. There's demand for what's going on there. And I guess, NBA, NHL, you can go through some places where markets have really moved greatly. But Oriole baseball is one of those things that I think Rob Manfred, people in baseball, you've said it, I've said it, maybe because we're old farts and we remember Boog and Brooks and all that this is a sleeping giant. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I believe that it's a sleeping giant. I believe that it's at least asleep. And it can be awakened. I don't know how good it can be. I don't know that it's going to be 3.6 million people with the team in D.C. anymore. But I do say, where is the North Star? Mm-hmm. Where's the ceiling? Where's the glass ceiling? Because the NFL, as much as it's offensive to some people and whatever, there's going to be 80,000 people in Buffalo that are going to fork over a cruise ship, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, just to be able to buy a ticket, right? And I did that here a generation ago. Yep. And then there's the Orioles can't get $10 for playoff ticket, right? Yeah. So somewhere in between being good, and the Orioles are good, and being something people want to invest in, and then what the level of investment is. Because the Ravens have spent all this money doing all these skyboxes and stuff. Same thing with the Bills. Like, the Bills are going to build this bigger stadium, and then the Bill's going to come. The check is going to come for the fans, and they're going to say, well, that experience used to cost me $80, and now it's $225. Yeah. That becomes offensive to some, that becomes, they do price people out. Baseball hasn't done that at all. Baseball's still like the affordable thing.
That's right.
Now it's like, all right, man, let's go. We got a new owner, let's go. And that's why I brought you down today, because this is a baseball bar. There's opening day countdown. We're 99 days to opening day here. Yeah. The city wants to explode on baseball again, and I'm beginning to wonder. And I know it's early, but I want to see them do not just sign a player, but do things differently than they were doing it. That's all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. If you look at what the NFL has done, I mentioned this earlier when we were talking off air. They have nationalized and internationalized the game and the fan base so that they are not entirely reliant on the local fan anymore. If you go to any game now, I challenge you to go to any NFL game, and if you can't find 10 to 50% of the people sitting in those seats wearing the jersey from an opposing team for the most part. I don't care if it's Denver or Cincinnati. A couple of weeks ago, the Eagles were here. That was close to 40% probably of the fan base. So they've done a great job of internationalizing and nationalizing the fan base, whether it's Joe Burrow or in the case of the Bills with Josh Allen, right? That's what people are attracted to. Increasingly, sports fans, younger demographic sports fans, are more interested in the player than they are in the team. And so that's sort of a replacement strategy that's been going on for a while. Is that
good? Look, the NBA went with that model for a long time, right?
I don't know whether it's good or bad, but I know it's where they now have to go because, we said earlier, the cost and the investment is so high that if that particular fan isn't coming, I got to find a replacement for him or her. And where do I go? I'm going to look in the local market first, and then I'm going to go regional, and then I'm going to go national, and then I'm going to go international. The number of people that progress through the Ravens Stadium here who are from Germany, England, I've heard them out on the various walk-arounds.
It's kind of unbelievable. David Modell came back 30 years ago. I sit here with David doing a show, and I'm buying a PSL, and I'm all ravened up, and Vinny Testaverde's the quarterback. If I would have said it's going to become an international game, I bet a guy like David, who's even had a Hollywood background and all that, would say, this isn't going to sell in England any more than soccer's ever going to sell here.
Yeah, no, people
right?
Have said
You know what I mean?
American football can't work in England or Germany, whatever.
It can't work out anywhere outside of America.
Right.
I mean, even baseball had the foothold in the Caribbean, Japan, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Baseball had some things going on. This football phenomenon over the last 25 years has been very, very intentional.
That's right.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I would have said to you 15 years ago, as Nasty Nestor on the radio, that ain't ever happening. Ravens going to pick up play over in London. Who's going to show up? What, are you going to take the whole city from here over there? No. I mean, I rode the subways over there.
Right.
I don't know how and why it's become popular. That would be something for me to talk to Niels, who saved my wife's life in Germany, that when I met him online 10 years ago, he told me he watched football, American football every week in Germany. That was 10 years ago. He's 31 now. He's been watching American football since he was a teenager because they put it in front of him.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, David Stern put the playbook out there for everybody back in the early 80s. David Stern, new commissioner of the NBA, essentially made travel trips to China and literally visited media, Chinese state media, other, and said, here's tapes. Please put these on and show NBA games in China in the early 1980s. That was the germ for how all of this began. And literally, what it comes back to, there's this very simple principle in marketing, particularly sports marketing, and that is reach. The first thing that you need is reach. If people can't see it,
China's got more people than anybody else on earth,
and
right?
India,
literally.
If people can't see it, then they can't be it, right? Now, that time horizon might be decades for that transition to occur, but that is why the NBA has about 35% of its players are foreign-born players wanting and needing to play in the NBA. Why? Because it's a simple economic theory. If you're labor, you want to go to where your reward is the highest. It doesn't matter what you do, whether you play basketball or you're a scientist or anything, you want to go where you get remunerated the highest. And right now the NBA and the NFL are at that level. Same thing for Major League Baseball. If you're a Dominican kid at 11 years old, your dream is to be signed by a Major League Baseball team and play there when you're 19, and it's certainly possible. One of the things that the NFL has done in addition to this outreach strategy is they've done a great job with what they call their Pathways program. I think I read recently that they're somewhere in the mid-20s, the number of players on NFL rosters. Now, most of them are on practice squads that are from other countries. I think there's 3, 4, or 5 players currently on active rosters, punters, kickers, things like that, who came from Nigeria or Australia or wherever it was. And that's what they're doing now. They're developing that talent pipeline. If you look back at the 1992 Dream Team, that's what kicked off NBA, the draw of the NBA.
Globalization
of it, right? So David Stern in the 80s goes to China. They put professionals in the Olympics for basketball in the 1992.
Very controversial, right?
And then
Crazy,
suddenly,
right?
30 years later, what do we have? We have some of the best athletes in the world want to play in the NBA. Why? Because that's where the greatest return for their talent and investment is.
And you feel that when you land in other places, the NBA. I mean, I felt that when I land in China, when you land in Tokyo, you land in other places, South America.
Yeah.
It's a foothold. The NFL is going for that here during the holidays. Marty Conway's here. Let's get to baseball and the Orioles, because that's why I dragged you down here. I think we talked about a month ago about revenue. Juan Soto, they haven't spent a lot of money. They bought a player from the Red Sox. They bought a 1-year. They are behaving as though Angelos owns the team and maybe he's added $20 million in pot money, $30 million in pot money that they're going to have a little bit more to spend. But I met Mr. Rubenstein. I know I told you this. The thing that disturbed me the most, he said, well, it's pretty, in baseball, it's common to spend what you make. And I'm thinking, well, I hope you plan on making more. Right? And planning on making more is the only way that Juan Soto or Gunnar Henderson or Jackson, pick any phenom you want, any $30, $40, $50 million player, pitcher, 6-year, 8-year, 15-year deals that they're giving to these guys at this point. If you're not playing there, you're not getting the best talent, right? And I think one thing's been a theme on my radio station, certainly with other hosts and stuff, is you want to win, you get the best players. I mean, that's what you do. And in baseball, the best players, they don't always win, but they give you the best chance to win. And in the case of the Orioles right now, I don't see anybody out on the front end of this saying things are different, and it doesn't feel different. And I see this isn't about me or my press pass or my history. These are the people in my world that buy tickets, that are Birdland Club members, that have had the prices raised, like all of this. There hasn't been good messaging from the baseball team thus far, other than we have a new owner. I think that's been the only message. I'm waiting for that. And I really do think the Masson part of the financial part of this and the way I'm going to get the game, whether it's going to be mobile, in my home, how I'm going to receive it, and where the revenue for all of that is, as we sit here and chase down these Christmas NFL games, where am I going to get the game? How much is it going to cost me? And I don't know that they've made that really clear, because we're not going back to home team sports.
Yeah, look, it doesn't matter whether you're a sports brand or soup brand or Nike shoes, whatever. You can't let your brand be defined by others, right? And the moment that you're not talking, that you're silent, people are going to fill that void with whatever they want. And so as we've discussed, the idea that now because media is essentially walking around in your pocket every day, you have to have a proactive approach to almost flooding the zone, if you will, which is we're going to be proactive in telling that story. And again, whether you're Nike or whether you're Campbell's, it doesn't matter on down the list, you have to be in that position where you're literally publishing almost every day or every hour repeatedly to do it, because there's a nonstop interest in consuming news about you, and obviously Baltimore.
Well, the team
Ravens,
websites have taken that to
that's
a
fine.
level of obsession to where like it's too much for me, and it's
But that's getting people. That's waiting for people to come to you. Literally, that's literally people saying, "Oh, let me go on and see what they have to say." You have to be in a position where you're almost the evangelist on a daily basis for whatever your cause is. And in this case, the cause is baseball or football or whatever it is. Because, like I said, if you're not talking about it and other people are, that's the narrative. And so it's a different media and a different consumer environment today than it ever was. And so back to your original point, whether this team in Baltimore is going to be defined by whatever, look, building a fan base, whether they're here in Baltimore or they're in San Diego or Seattle, or whatever it is, that's your job, is to find new fans and get them involved. I know there are great statistics about if you can get somebody to your game before the age of 7 or 10, or there's various numbers about that, how likely they are to be a long-term fan of yours. And so those numbers are very specific, and it's so, like I said,
well, kids run the bases free has been going on for at least a decade.
Yeah, and then that's fine, but that's just one piece, right? You've also got to get to people. Those kids don't have disposable income. It's nice to get them, but if you want to look at people who are between the ages of 18 and 34, that's the demographic, and sometimes it goes up to 45. That's the demographic that consistently has the most money to spend on anything. And so that's your target audience. That's what they call the money demographic, and men and women, and you have to have a strategy that gets to them on a daily basis. It can't just be about who you're signing and not signing, right? That is the only narrative.
And how much my tickets are. My Birdland deal is the other thing I read about.
Right. So what my experience in the game was, there were 2 seasons. There was the playing season and the talking season, and we had a strategy for each of those seasons.
Tell me about this. Right? I love to hear. This is right? Real Oriole way, right?
Yeah.
This is so Larry Lucchino.
Right, exactly.
What year is this? 88. When did you join?
No, that was late 80s, early 90s.
Okay, all right. So you're about to move to Camden Yards. Okay.
Right. So there was the.
And the seasons weren't good then. Don Ossie, Leela, the seasons
got
80,
trapped into
4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. You were
same experiences. Got trapped into signing free agents, and then those didn't quite work out. And now you've got a minimum salary roster, and that roster almost wins the American League East, and all that narrative. It's not so much different than today. The dollars are a lot different, and the culture is different. But like I said, there's a playing season, and what's your strategy around, a media and communication, all that. And then there's a strategy around the selling season.
What is the talking season? What is the selling?
The talking season is starting in almost late August. Okay, we're going to put our tickets on sale for next year. What's the price going to be? When can you buy them? All the different things. What's the packaging? What does that look like? And then progressively during the course of whether it's the non-football season or non-baseball season or non-basketball season, you see organizations that are thriving. If you look down at Washington, right, their NBA team I think right now is like 3-20, right? How many people do they have in their seats? 15,000. You would say, gosh, how is that possible? The team is 3-20. Who would care? Those tickets were sold months ago. They were part of a package. They were part of some other organization. There's some reason to be there. So Ted Leonsis and his group, both the Capitals and Wizards and the Mystics, they do an excellent job of being out there in the marketplace every day of the year virtually, including the talking season. Because you're 3-20, you'd say, gosh, there should be 7,000 people in the stands. There's not. So
that shocks me. I did not know that.
That they were 3-20?
Well, no, I found that out the other day. They were 3-19 when I tweeted about it.
Right.
And it kind of shocked me a little bit.
Yep.
And the Capitals are outstanding.
Yep.
A lot of folks don't know that either. I'm going to have some guests here today. Amicci's talking about that as well. But, the fact that you get after it in the offseason so you have a base. You don't want to enter opening day with 6,000 tickets sold for the second day. which has been going on for 50 years here, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
repeat buyers, people buying in advance, people repeat buyers, all that. All of that takes cultivation. It takes staff. It takes commitment to do it. It takes evangelizing, not just the performance on the field, obviously, or the court for the Wizards, but what they're doing in the community. And look, all teams and organizations do it. Some teams and organizations do it exceptionally, and that's just the difference, because the playbook is available for everyone
But that's
to
a
see.
local effort to do exceptionally. If you're doing it exceptionally, you're doing it within 30 miles of your facility, right? Literally.
I don't know about there's a distance, but you're doing it authentically, right? And people understand authenticity, and they understand a commitment from the ownership on down, because, look, at the end of the day, these are local businesses. Why do people support a local business? Yes, the food is great here and fantastic, but they know who these people are.
Right.
And so they're going to repeatedly come back.
Sure.
And they're going to want to support that. So that takes time. You have to build that culture over time. Obviously, there was an ownership group here that over time it deteriorated to the point where once Peter was no longer really actively involved or even capably involved, it just sort of frayed, literally, till the point of saying, I don't know if I really want to sell, but we really need to sell, right? And so now you're starting literally probably from almost ground zero. Look, they've done a nice job. What I said earlier was there are fans here. Look, this team went through, 11 or 12 years of under 500 baseball, and people said, oh, my gosh, they're missing a whole generation of Oriole fans. They're going to leave. The answer to that was no. To me, it was like Bermuda grass in the winter. It's there, it's dormant, and it's brown. You've got to put something on it in order to make it green.
Marty Conway is here. You did everything but mow the lawn at Memorial Stadium back in the 80s. Give a little bit of your baseball background, because I think of you're lacrosse official, you're basketball official too.
Yeah,
right?
Yep.
I mean, you're a sports guy, but I think of baseball as your sort of homecoming. It's what you worked in, and you still like baseball. You still watch. Anytime you stay up with the Nationals when they were good, the Orioles. What is it about baseball for you? Because you didn't even grow up in a baseball city, right?
I grew up in Syracuse. We had a minor league team.
Right.
The minor league team was the New York Yankees for the longest time, and then they left because Toronto expanded. Toronto was the expansion team, and the Toronto Blue Jays came. I worked for that team. I sent a letter every year when I was 12, 13, and 14 to the general manager asking if I could work, and finally he wrote back a letter to my parents, not to me, and said, when he turns 16, I can hire him because that's the legal age to work.
That's how bad you wanted to work in baseball.
Baseball
was all you wanted to do.
My parents were season ticket holders to a minor league team, and that was our
Who did you see play there? The Blue Jays kind of stunk, right?
The Thurman Munson days, Ron Guidry days.
Okay, so you had the early 70s.
Gosh.
Okay. So
Bobby Cox was a player there before he became a manager. Those are the kind of people that came through that town. The home team. Yeah, Toronto was very early. They were an expansion team. That was the Ernie Witt days, and people.
McGregor pitched there.
He did. Absolutely.
Yeah, McGregor pitched there for the Yankees before the trade.
When that trade
76.
Happened, when that trade happened, all those guys came there, and then eventually, went to Baltimore. So
I love talking baseball when I can say McGregor, and you know what I'm talking about.
That's what I said. It was, very simply, that was what it was. I worked there for 3 years while I was in high school. So worked games, played baseball, did all that. And it just became something that was kind of second nature to me, and I could watch a game.
But you didn't play ball at that level. You play high school ball like that?
Played high school ball, played at college.
Okay.
And so, like I said,
baseball is an incredible thing. My last name's Aparicio, so I got it honest. But you kind of can't quit it. And being here and still having this crazy radio station all these years later, watching this changeover and meeting Mr. Rubenstein and wondering what Katie Griggs – I've said to everybody, seeing this thing get resurrected again after Peter would just be a great part for my life at this point in my life, as I'm 56, these next 10 or 15 years. But I also stand in judgment of everything that's gone wrong, and it feels to me like the new group wants all of us to have amnesia because they weren't here to witness it either. And this is where I said trauma, right? Those 10,000 seats are absolute trauma. That should never happen here. My father would roll out. My father would not be able to believe that after all that's been built the last 50 years. that they reverted this thing back to 1973 where you can't sell out playoff tickets.
Yeah, so look, it's not uncommon. When I was working in the game, there was a circumstance in Boston. Tom Yawkey and the Yawkey family had owned the team for a long time. Tom Yawkey passed away, and his wife, I think his wife's name was Jean.
Jean,
She went by Mrs. Yawkey. She owned the team for a long time and had sort of day-to-day management people in there, but nobody that owned the team was literally running it. They went through a pretty awkward period where they were, terrible, and the Red Sox nation, as we know it today, suddenly was like, we're not showing up, and it was terrible. And it wasn't until finally that Mrs. Yawkey passed away, and that's when Lucchino's group came in and bought the team and instantly, within a year or so, revived it. Why? By giving it attention. That's not unlike, I think, what's happened here, which is there was a period of time where it was just impossible really to do anything given the ownership structure. And look what happened. That ownership group that went in collectively with Larry and other folks there and suddenly put some energy into the franchise and listened to fans and ended up with, there was discussion. If you don't remember this, there was discussion. We need a new baseball stadium.
Oh, I was
in Boston,
up there in '99 during
they were like,
All-Star
we
game.
need a new baseball stadium. And I remember Larry and others talking and saying, it's like, wait a minute, this stadium holds 34,000. How can you make that franchise competitive when stadiums have 10 to 15,000 more seats than that?
Charge more.
They figured out the experiences. They put some, seats on top of the Green Monster.
They hired Janet Marie.
They did things like that to energize the ballpark. Now, back to your issue about Buffalo earlier. Guess what? It costs more now to go to a game in Boston than it did, but people don't even think about it. Why? The experience is so much better, and they feel comfortable about who's getting the money and what they're doing. And they're trying to win. Now, there are times when the Red Sox just don't win, and they're fourth in the division or fifth in the division. But there's always a sense that we're just around the corner. We are 1 year away from getting back into it. You have to be able to instill that sort of confidence in the fan base, which is we're never going to be 2 years out. We're never going to be 3 years out. We don't have this 5-year rebuilding plan. I don't think fans really have a patience for that anymore.
Well, Bisciotti was the first one to say we need to be competitive every year.
Exactly.
And that's something that, they've held through for 2 decades. It's how coaches keep jobs.
And why shouldn't you? Like, you're in the performance business. Why would you ever go into a business that's performance-related?
Well, somebody's going to be in last place in all these sports,
of course
right?
It is. Things happen. Quarterbacks get hurt. Injuries occur. There's always things. But if you have people in the key positions that are functioning well and you have the capability, you should always be – for baseball, for football, that's the quarterback and it's the head coach. For baseball, it's the pitching staff. It's the middle of the order, whatever it is. You need to have that nucleus because what you were saying earlier about signing players is – it's not just the winter meetings in baseball, it's your roster. Because if you look at baseball compared to other sports, baseball needs, on average, I think, probably somewhere in the mid-40 number of players, maybe even more, who are going to come through and be on your roster during the course of a 162-game season.
You're going to use 20 pitchers.
So what kind of depth do you have to do it? Because if you look at it, Earl Weaver used to say, after 100 games, I'll tell you what I have. Because for him, that was the point of the season where he knew what he had, and the last 60 games was where you won or lost. And I think he proved that when he managed, it's like Sir Alex Ferguson. That management at the end of matches or the end of the season is the difference between being in the playoffs, and then once you get in the playoffs, you have a shot. And that's all that really matters is getting your team to the playoffs, whether you're home team, road team, whatever. Then you can win 3 in a row in the NFL, or you can win 10 games in Major League Baseball and get into the World Series.
Well, the Mike Tomlin thing's unbelievable, right? For all these years to be above 500.
It's. I think when people look back at it, they're going to look at that and say, how did that happen? Look at what's
happened to the Patriots even, right?
Exactly,
right? This fall from –
The system in all sports is set up against that sustained success.
Not in baseball because of the money.
With the reverse order draft and other things like that. I know they've tried to make it such that you can't tank anymore, and they've tried to do that. But generally speaking, you're penalized for your success, or you're at least put to the back of the line, and you have to prove that you can do it all over again. And so sustained success in sports is something that you, whether it's in the New Zealand All Blacks and the World Rugby or whoever it is, Manchester City now in the Premier League, that's what you study and say, how are they doing that? They're doing that with continuity. They're doing that with all these. But they're doing it by changing and adapting along the way as well.
Marty Conway is here. We are at Amicci's. We're at the main bar here in Little Italy on High Street. Get down here, get the meatballs. I mean, get a gift card. They'll love Amicci's. It's all brought to you by our friends at the Maryland Lottery. I have Ravens scratch-offs to give away. Also, Seth Elkin's going to be bringing me some fresh scratch-offs. Apparently, they're giving me the Magic 8-Ball scratch-off. So, Magic 8-Ball. Will the Orioles spend money? You know, it appears to be so. I don't know. We'll do all of that. Also, our friends at Jiffy Lube Multi-Care. Luke is back and forth during the holidays. Pittsburgh and Houston this week. We got a lot of things going on. We're going to be at Costas on Wednesday. Sort of a parting shot for you on the baseball thing, and this is, I'm trying to organize a Dear Katie Griggs letter and just try to figure out what the game plan is, talking to really smart people like you, people that have run franchises, what's on her desk, and managing through that above and beyond Masson and who Mike Elias is going to sign. That's the baseball stuff, and the fans are going to talk about all of that. But what really arrived on her desk when she got here, and what are the first plans of action, and what is the big strategy on her whiteboard in her big office for her new lieutenants and all that. Like, I'd love to know what they think this can be. Do they think this can be a $200 million payroll? How do we get there? Is that the $600 million they're going to spend on this and that, and they're going to have a casino, and they're going to do this, and they're going to – I don't know, but they need to generate more money. And to your point, get people excited, right? You want to get people excited about the team and get them into it. And CFG Bank Arena, I didn't want to be interrupted, but you were going on and on about experience. And the CFG Bank Arena, it's such a better experience than the Baltimore Civic Center ever was. Exactly. So when people go there, they don't mind a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. And they say, oh, the show's there. I'm looking forward to going there. And the way when something's at Merriweather, you feel good about it. When it's at FedEx Field or whatever they're calling, you're like, I don't know about the Stones down there. Maybe I'll go to Philly instead. You know, like because of the venue. Camden Yards is not that. The baseball team is not that. I hear what the community would say about crime in the city. And as I sit here in the middle of the city looking out the window, I would just say the baseball has something to sell here that they didn't have 5 years ago, which was a long, boring, I don't need a golden halo home run, right? I mean, whatever this stupid thing, whatever that is, dumb. The Manfred man's dumb. There's a lot of things they've done that have been dumb, but the experience of selling baseball now, you're going to come down at 6:30 on a summer night, see a good baseball team in a premier ballpark. Peter's dead. I mean, all of that. Gunner's alive. You know, like there's a lot for them to sell. They have something that Peter didn't have the last 15 or 20 years, including fresh credibility if they want it, if they're willing to earn it. Sure. And authenticity if they're willing to invest in such a thing. I haven't seen that yet. I'm invested in. I'm here today talking about them. Are they talking about themselves? So you and I are here. We're invested. We're talking about the baseball team. You know?
And other people are talking about it during the course of the week sometimes. But I don't know what's on the big board or what the overall development strategy is. But it's pretty simple. No matter what sport you're responsible for, whether it's basketball, hockey, baseball, etc., your first responsibility is to create fans, and your second responsibility is to curate fans. Right? So we got it. What's our approach on creating fans? Right? Men, women, tall people, short people, whatever it is, our approach. And then once we have established them as a fan, how do we curate them? Do we get them to the ballpark once? Do we get them there once a month? Do we get them there 6 times a year? What is that approach? Do they do other things besides, go to our games? Do they go to other things like that? So it's pretty simple because without that fan base, everything else literally doesn't exist until you have that fan base showing up all the time. And so the NFL's challenge has been not just developing fans, but getting them, is the football game experience better than the TV game experience, right? That was an issue for the last 5 years, and teams here in Baltimore and others have invested heavily in the fan experience because we want you to be there. Like you said, the decision that you make to get in your car or get on your train or whatever it is and go there, wherever there is, Lincoln Financial Field or FedEx Field, now Northwest Field, that's a conscious decision. That's your time. The most valuable thing that you and I have is our time. We have money. Sometimes we have more. Sometimes we have less. The most important thing that you have is time. And so
and baseball asks a lot of that.
And people are emotional and rational beings. And so everything that I'm thinking about has to appeal to that emotional component and your rational component. Why should you come out? Why should you bring your kids? Why should you meet your friends there to do it? Why all the time, and address those? So like I said, at the core of it, it's creating fans and curating fans. The rest is the business that you pile on top of it, and you can ultimately figure that out. But the groundwork is every day you should be out there thinking about how many fans do we create today? What's our strategy on that? And then once we have them, how do we curate them into an Orioles fan? Maybe they grew up in Montgomery County and they were prone to the Nationals. Can we make them into an Orioles? Is there something about that? So the work is never done in that regard. And if there's 45,000 seats times 81 games, that's your number. Right, we need to sell 3.3 million tickets. That's our goal in tickets, and then we move on to other things like media and communications and community and other things like that.
Young people interested in this when they come to class with you at Georgetown?
Oh my goodness, yeah, tremendously. There are
people want to work in sports because they're excited about sports, right?
And as they should, because they see it as something that is bigger than themselves, right? Now your
daughter works in sports, right?
Yeah, she reports on it. She thinks about the football, almost every day. And so whether your passion is about helping people in healthcare or finance or investments, whatever it is, but people come into our program at Georgetown previously disposed to some sports experience that they had as a little kid or little girl or whatever it was, and they see themselves and think, I think I could be there and I think I could make a difference. And secondly, it wouldn't feel like work. Right, literally, if you work in the sports industry, the little dirty secret.
It didn't feel like work till the 33rd year for me.
You go to You go to work while others come for their enjoyment. Right, if you're at the game, fact of the matter is you're not seeing much of the game because you're working constantly. So you better enjoy it for something existential beyond that, because like I said, you're working while other people are playing and enjoying, and so it has to be. So they come to us at Georgetown because they know they want to do this in one way, shape, or another. They're not quite sure which area of the industry they might want to work in, and so they're doing internships and they're sampling and they're hearing from their instructors, and eventually they figure it out. We just try to give them a leg up over the horse and get them riding the horse, and then eventually, where they go is up to them.
Do you think all the sports business chased this? I think they had a pretty good party here. They had a hell of a party. We're at Amicci's. We're in downtown Baltimore. We're in Little Italy, as they say. Come by, get the cannoli. I am at some point going to get the garlic cheese bread and the meatball and bring all that together in the way that I like to do it down here. But come for the marinara, stay for the grown-up grape soda. Marty Conway is the sports business professor at Georgetown. Was involved with the Orioles and the Rangers. He is my friend. He wanted meatballs. He didn't want crab cakes. Sam Sessa's going to be stepping up here. I think Seth Elkin's coming by. John Maroon's going to be coming by later on today. Alan McCallum, our original Oriole reporter, in a bar where they love the Orioles as much as anybody I know. Also with Monica Pence and Monica Barlow, her legacy in the family here with the Orioles. So there's an Oriole countdown here of 99 days to go. They always have the standings up here at Amicci, so this is legit. Come on down here. And I know it's not your first time at Amicci's because you and I have dined here previously. So we'll be at Costas on Wednesday. We're going to be at Lib's Grill in Bel Air on the 7th of January and putting something together up in Harford County. The Maryland Lottery bringing it together for us. And we're going to continue to march on. I'm going to let Marty go get himself a Caesar salad proper and maybe some of that calamari that I had here. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. Happy holidays. We're back for more on Baltimore Positive. Stay with us.